Hello and welcome to another episode of Gifting Good Oxide. We continue with the include if, cleanup, and fixes. So goal is once again to refactor the on-branch tests that relate to this part here into a form that makes it really easy to see what they're testing so that each particular aspect of the documentation here has its own separate tests, or it's clear and obvious that this kind of feature is tested. And before we do that, we quickly look at a few things that were addressed after yesterday's review. And fix the backslash test. So I'm not entirely sure. I don't think there was any breakage. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Then there's a fix about case insensitivity, because I mentioned that yesterday. So we can take a look at that for sure. And then there is the addition of a test for dot dot. And it's actually, look, so it actually is a valid case here. I didn't really see it when I was asking for it, but yeah, currently there was only the dot dot test, and now we have a way to handle or to see if dot dot is actually verified. Cool. So that was a lucky pick. Good, then let's dive right in. I already pulled the latest of GitDM matches, and if you look at how it's called, now you have this additional parameter for ignore case. And if you see how this is used, then ultimately it boils down to a much more obvious way of describing that this is going to be ignore case. So I think using this mode would be much better, much more obvious in case of ignore case. Because there's not just a true false, but it's a wild match mode, and let's call it like this. And then when we want to use this, we would say we want to match /literal, and the wild match mode is added to that. And I wonder, should this be in one line? Yeah, probably. No, wait. The match mode is used twice. And for that reason, we definitely keep this in a separate variable. Now the call sites need adjustment. So this is, no, I don't have it anymore. It's git glob wild match mode empty. That's a no op. And that's, yeah, let's leave it at empty because now we would expect the test to fail, right? Let's run the tests here. Oh, doesn't need to be mutable. It's fair. One test already failed. That's the way. Yeah, should never run everything, just the conditional here. And that should already repeat the failure, and we are here. So this is also something here. I would wish to see something obvious, like now one doesn't match case I match. Maybe that's already enough of a hint, but even more obvious, because this is usually somewhat questionable, like why is this one? One seems to be magic or special, and is this, what would be called base value or unaltered value, or if you see this, it didn't work, then I would understand a bit better. So I think it's all about naming here and all about setting your assertions making your assertions very clear. So we can definitely improve on that. And one day we will. But let's fix those tests by calling this ignore case. Now, hey, it's not a function to call anymore. And now this works. Okay. So also something that I see now is, it's just minor, but what's the most important thing here? Get dir matches. Is it target config path or options, or is it the condition? Well, it is the condition for sure, because that's the, you know, that's the thing that determines whether the get dir actually matches. Options contains the get dir and more. By the way, is options used? Is there more of options that it's actually used? Get dir, install dir, two things, so we can just extract them. I think that makes things easier to read usually. Install dir, get dir, is there more in there? Max depth, yeah, there is more, so we are interested only in this. Destructure that. Let me take the install dir, we take the get dir, and that's it. Okay, that still works, good. Is this an actual improvement, by the way, to just pull this out? And not in terms of code size or, you know, avoiding line breaks, because these are just accessed once. I think in terms of clarity, because we don't need to know that this comes from options as far as we are concerned, just parameters, and that's a way to write that. So I would keep that here as well. Also, the reason I like that is that it makes clear that we only need these two fields and not the whole options, the whole bunch of options. So that's why I would keep that. Good. Now we have a bunch of line breaks here. Why not? Because now it looks a bit more symmetrical. Not that it matters, but that is just as easy on my eyes. And I think that's a valid refactor. Let's look at the dot here. This was a fix. So basically we get into this whole business when we think it is a relative path. But, you know, what I find a bit worrying here is that we don't actually care about dot. We care about dot slash or dot slash, because otherwise, oh no, wait, it can also be, that's not correct. It can be dot, it can be dot, it doesn't have to be a slash. Which also means there's something we have to consider here, right? Because here, so without a slash, what happens? Without a slash, it's not a, the thing is, it can be files that start with dot. And let me just take the dot away. So the point I'm making is either this ends with a slash and then there can be some other part that we take, right? This is exactly what we truncate. We skip the dot or the dot. But if there is no slash behind it, then we might take away legitimate parts of a file name. And it just looks like it's a relative path, even though it's not. So my general problem is that I do still, you know, have to wrap my head around these tests and understand this is recently added, right? And understand of how the conditional include works. Dir is parent. Okay, so basically we say that the git dir is whatever this tries to include, and this is why that then works. Okay. So I think in order to clear this up, really all these need to be their own test case. And then there should be some utility that helps us to set up the basics that are always the same. And then you don't have to end up writing this one big config file that has all these values that, you know, you wonder how they should relate to each other, which is usually a big question mark for me. So let's first keep the refactor here. It's really just that. Okay. And now for the dot dot. So this matches perfectly what the test does, right? And we could just, for the fun of it, I don't really, okay, let's not get sidetracked again, because now I'm doing exactly that. What we want to do is check the on branch and try to refactor on branch, because it's much more limited in scope. And on branch tests are here. And this is the mix test that we wish to rewrite. And let's see which test we want to have here. So by the looks of it, and I took a moment to read myself into this and also check the Git code itself, the only automation that really happens here is that it adds a double asterisk if the path ends with a slash. This way, foo / will match will match a hierarchy of branches. And that's the key. It's a branch here. So we must be sure that whatever we match is only in refs heads, because that's where the branches live. And we can match nothing else. And if you look at the implementation, if I recall correctly, then what we currently have is something that I'd need to understand, but it seems to be not correct. Like, if you compare this with what Git does, then Git seemingly never prefixes. I mean, there is no starts with slash kind of special case, unless I'm really missing this. The pattern ends with a slash. We do this, but there's no starts with a slash, right? And I don't know what happens when you start with a slash, because that's not really how this is supposed to work, I presume, at least when you look at the Git code that says, okay, resolve my head, and then we get something that is typically revs heads something something. And this prefix is skipped, and then we actually compare the short name. So this means that people are expected to never put an absolute name there. They're always expected to put a relative one there, because it's assumed to be in refs heads, and you don't have to specify this. The condition itself is not cleaned up to account for that, and all we do is we set the pattern to the condition, which can contain these things, right? But it will only ever match on stuff that is in refs heads, because this is how this is implemented. And that's probably something that, you know, we have to separately validate as well. So, I mean, the first most basic test is that a direct match works, huh? A direct match. So let's implement that here. So that literal branch names match. And for that, we always need a temp dir. Then we need some file to include. There's always the same thing. We have a base value that should not be, that would be overwritten if the file is included. And yeah, we can call that x, why not? The section can be section s, so s.x. We can keep things very, very short. Doesn't have to be core or simulate anything special. Section doesn't matter, but we have to put it into a section. So might as well call it section then, you know, then it's clear it's a section. So yeah, why not? Okay, so what will we have? We have a temp dir, but that's kind of the last thing we're interested in. We're not really interested in that. Then we have a, how do we match this later? We create options. Oh, that's interesting. That's the branch name, right? So we take the full names as expected, but we skip this prefix as well. And the branch name to, oh yeah, that's the way we configure. That's the context to pass it the branch name. And that's something we want to set as well as a string. And let's just use the full name so that we can also test. Okay, but what's the return value? That's what I'm trying to figure out. The return value is the config that we can query later. And since it's always the same thing, we can just do that on the fly. We can actually return the string itself. And we always expect this to exist because we know there's a base value. And what we really want to know is the value. And we could even put that all into one assertion. So and then we don't even need the temp directory. It's really just one assertion that we need, and the value is what tells us what we need to know. Okay. And this is a top level idea, and we might be able to pass some additional context or information as a message as well. So yeah, assert section value. So because that's really all we do, but we set it up so that there is some include, because there's going to be a local helper just in this module, so we don't have to be more specific. It tests on branch, it's very specific to on branch. And we know that. Okay, so the branch we have is literal match. That's for the context, and the value we pass is, yeah, maybe it's default. It's override worked. So we want the override to work. I just tried to set this up so that we can also test that should, for negative ones, things that should not override. And maybe we just value should be override by include. Okay, and then there could be a message. Can I specify this even more? Yeah, I could write out what's already in the name of the test, so maybe not. Maybe not here. Okay. So assert section value. We have the branch name as a string. And then this new enum. Override by include, and the other one is that there's no override. Value should be the base value. Okay, that's an expected value. Expect this value, maybe that works. And that should compile. Okay, good. Now let's steal a lot of code here, which is basically this for the, it's basically this for the assertion itself. And it's a bit cumbersome. We first have to construct something that is fully owned. And then we have to pass it as branch name. The config, that's a config we create here. So that's always the section of some value. And here we expect a branch override. I like that. Depending on what this is, right? So and we always expect this value to exist. So this might also not be the override, so we can't say that anymore. We have to differentiate depending on the value here. So let's do that. So value base value should not be overridden as the branch does not match. And then there is override by include base value is overridden by an included file because the value, because the condition matches. Okay, same thing here with the value. So value override is this, and value base is base value. Something like that. Okay. And now I think only the config path is missing for us, but we can probably create that. So this is the root config. Yeah, they don't really, let's call it like this, root config. This is where we put everything in. And from there, there's some includes. We will write that. Then we write the included config, right? Included config, include config. Okay, two files to write. Let's write the base one first, which seems to be done mostly like that. I copy this, clean it up. Yeah, let's keep the path together. So root config. Yeah, this as path should not be needed. You can just reference it. if we use it again, and we do use it again, and we use it just once. Oh yeah, that one's an sref path. Okay, so that's also correct because we could also consume it there. So this should be section, and the value, do I call it value when querying it? I think I do. Yes, and value is base value. Okay. And now there's the inclusive section. And that will be the included config. We need to keep this around because we don't want to write that too. Oh yeah, here, this is one more thing, right? Like, what's the condition? Ha, the condition. That has to go here. Definitely. And the condition here is literal match. Okay. Condition escape backslash is included config. And now we write the included config. And I think we can just copy paste a little bit of that, remove this, call it section value, and now this is called branch override. Doesn't really matter because it's all self-contained here. And included config, please. We don't need that anymore, so we can just let it be owned. That seems to be the natural formatting. Okay. And that's our generator for a basic test that is independent. And let's see if that works at all. You might be missing a string literal. Ah, yeah, right. So now this is not a literal anymore, so we have to do it like this. The message is passed, base is never constructed, that's fair. And include if, no, wait. And we now have the first very explicit literal branch name matches, which is what Git does and which is what we would expect. It's not so explicitly mentioned here. I think that's a good time for a commit, because we now have basic test setup for specialized. And I think this could even, could this be reused? Yeah, this could be reused in Git dir. This could even be generalized to also be suitable for Git dir. All you got to do is change the condition as well and make the condition adjustable, right? And this branch override doesn't have to be named branch override. We could call it include override, and then it would be more general. Basic test setup for specialized, for more specialized tests, so that we can be very specific about what we are testing and make sure we don't forget something that is in the specification. And this probably includes negative tests. So now that we have this, let's try a negative test. Literal branch name matches. And we can also say that full ref names do not match. So let's call this simple, because now it's really just about that. And now this should be the base value. Does this work? And that does work. That's great. That's important. And I guess we can try to lure out the code that shouldn't be there by writing very explicit tests. We can also say that starting a ref with a slash is actually not a valid ref. So that should fail right here because we tried to create a full name ref. Hey, that's interesting. Oh, yeah, right, that's the condition. I might be confusing something. Let's validate branch name. Oh, we get the short name. This is why that works. But the condition is still handled in a way that I think is partially wrong, at least this one here. So I would like to lure this one out. So if we start with a slash, we get a slash right away. Where is that from? Yeah, I don't see it here. I don't think it's from anywhere. So is there a test for that right now that would lure this out? Because if not, then we can just remove it. Okay, there is none. That's good. There, we tried yesterday that there is a test for this. So to check again, this should fail, right? Because that's our actual, yes, good. This should always be a valid ref name, the full name to be precise. And full names do not match. We also know that current refs or that non-branches never match. So if you're not in refs heads. So if this one here is, yeah, we're currently checking out, what's a good example for that? A non-branch that could be checked out. Huh. Yeah, it's a bit, if you're on git bisect good. This is something somebody does specifically. It's valid, but it's nothing, and it's something we should never match against. So that should not work. Non-branches never match, does that? Is that the case? That is the case. Cool. Refs bisect, good. Then what's next? We should validate that if a pattern ends with slash, this matches automatically everything that is in that subdirectory, so to say. So let's do that. Okay, patterns ending with slash match subdirectories recursively. So we go with refs heads, feature b start or whatever. So here we want feature b, and that should override. Or we want just all the features. That should also override. And just for good measure, feature b start should also match the whole thing. And now it's kind of time to have an additional message here, it feels. So that we can clarify that this is really just for good measure. But yeah, maybe I'm overthinking it. It's not really what we are officially testing here. It's really just to be very sure that this works. So if we remove this, we should have this test specifically fail, maybe along other ones. Yes, very good. And the mixed one, we will eventually remove that once we have the individual test cases. Cool. Then what's next? Yeah, I think the rest is just actual globs inside, huh? So let's see what we have here. So simple globs do not pass component boundary or do not exceed component boundary. And what I mean with this is that we do a path aware matching. So a star does not actually get past the slashes, which otherwise would not be the case. So this just validates that we use the matcher correctly. And we can do this with, yeah, we want to match any feature. So we are in feature A here, and we want to match any feature specifically. Oh no, wait. So this does not test anything because that would work in both cases. Feature A start, we can do that here as well. And we want to match any started feature, so to say. And that would that match if we do not respect component boundaries? I wonder. But in any case, I think this is how we can test it. We can circle around it. That's the condition, but this will not match AB. And if we would not handle these boundaries correctly, then the star could match AB. I think this is what shows us that, but we can put that to the test, of course. Probably that works because it's correctly implemented already. So that's the clue here. And there's no case insensitivity here either. So nothing to worry about there. It's not case sensitive. If we make this empty, then our second test should fail. And this really means we want to have some look at the here. So branch override is left. We've overridden, but we expect the base value. Now I want to have some better. The base value should not be overridden as the branch does not match. Let's make this better. Let's make the assertion error better. So I think we just have multiple versions of this maybe, so that I don't have to adjust all of these invocations. Specifically, also I want to make it a bit less branch specific. Oh no, it will always be kind of branch specific, will it be? It's okay to also repeat a bit of the, it's okay, let's keep it branch specific. Branch override, we include, let's make this really, really clear. By include. By include, okay. Now this will get an additional message, which is optional. And we just call, we just call this with none. And that will do. Good. And now the message can just be dumped here. Just a debug print. Let's keep it really, really simple. call it message to be a bit more specific. I guess there's no need to shorten that either. Okay, so now I can go back here just for good measure. We would expect path. Huh? Why does that not work? Ah, yeah, that's an option. Okay, fine. We would expect, yeah, path to branch path to work as well. Okay, and now for this one. Yeah, and the path matching would never match A/B as it cannot cross slash, and crosses the word to use here. Okay, so let's run this again. Let's see what kind of message we get. Should be a nicer one now. Branch name, no, okay, that's not ours. The base value should not be overridden as the branch does not match. And then infos, path matching would never match AB. But it did, because the implementation is currently broken, and now it's not anymore. And that's that. And it's very, very explicit as to what's happening here. And most importantly, it allows us to focus on the values that matter. I'm still not super happy. I mean, this could be some struct that kind of forces us to have a key here or some value that tells us this is the condition. Maybe that's something we should do to make it clear. Assert section value. How's this called? Options, maybe. Yeah, I think that would look nicer. So let's just do this. But first, a commit. Something like that. Okay. Now, I mean, it's just emulating, forcing us to put names here. So we have a bunch of options. And we put these here. And now this just gets options. Condition, branch name. Oh. Options. Oop. Ops. And here we just destructure this right away. But without that. Oh yeah, we also have a message, but we can't pass this separately. That's okay. Like this. Hey. Syntax error because of that. Okay. And now we've got a lot of trouble here because that's the condition, that's the branch name. I will spare you watching me doing this. And it's all done. And now it looks a bit better. Condition, branch name, expect, value overridden by exclude, or value override by exclude. So that reads pretty well. And that's, I think, as clear as I can make it. Which is good because now we want to say, try these additional globs, right? These recursive globs that actually match multiple ones. So this one is a good starting position for that. But first, a commit like that, more readability. Okay, now I think we can just use this. Simple globs do not cross boundary. Double star globs cross-component boundaries. And we can use this as an example because now that should match. We don't necessarily need to have a message here. And that's the override. And this is just something the wildcard matching does for us. We can't really turn that off. It's just, we use wildcard matches, so that works. Oh wait, actually we can turn that off, but then, yeah, then more tests fail, but also this one would fail. So let's try that. So now that at least will fail, because it's a special path matching thing that double star works like this. Simple globs do not match. Oh, double star globs. Look at that. Okay, so I'm wrong about this. So double star is always being handled. But I think no. If you turn that off, we can't really detect that, because if we turn it off, it will always match. So yeah, we can't detect if it wouldn't work. But at least we have a test that checks the single star. Is there anything else? Double star glob ends with no. So I think that's pretty much it, and there should be nothing left here. Let's double check and check the path. Foo star. Let's, yeah, we do that, but let's check it with a prefix. So there is a literal branch name match, simple globs. Where are simple globs? Do I not? Oh, I see I kind of undertest the globbing part. Simple globs do not path boundary. Let's call it a simple prefix glob. Simple globs. Yeah, let's just say various simple glob patterns. They work. So let's say prefix and then we glob this. So prefix suffix, this matches the suffix. But this will not match. Yeah, let's use a message here. This will not match something like this. Oh. Prefix slash suffix. Because these single stars do not cross component boundaries. And let's see if that's actually true. And it is. So that's again kind of a wildcard related matching. Not too much we have to test here, I think, but at least I want to be sure I don't kind of forget some tests that would be good to have. Trailing slash, we have that. And that looks like it's the same, but different. So there is another branch path that is not, looks like it's kind of the same, right? These two, hierarchy branch, another branch, just a space in between, which I think should never matter. Having written git glob, I know it doesn't. It will just be matched if it's a star. So that's simple glob patterns and star glob patterns. We can also try suffixes. So what about starting? Everything with a suffix should also match. But this should not. Right. But we could make one that does match like this, because it just matches this prefix part exactly. Yeah, nothing to be written here, I think. And that, ooh, finally. No. It's the test. This should be all right. Okay, great. So I think that's all the test from what I can see. And there's nothing super complicated here. This is where you can get creative. Let's check one last time. So also check the branch name match. We do that. This isn't too unspecific, so it doesn't tell me what it really is testing. Hierarchy branch name match. BR1. That's the BR/ we have that too. And that's it. So the whole mix testing can now go. Let's check the output of our tests here. Yeah. Patterns ending with / match subdirectories recursively. Simple glob patterns. Simple globs do not cross component boundaries. We test that twice just to be sure, so to say. Here we are explicit about it. Literal branch names match. Double star globs cross component boundaries. Full ref names do not match ever, and non-branches never match ever. So I think that's as good as I can make it here. And that's another commit. And we remove the previous test case and just replace it with one that has all the bits and pieces. Last thing, let's look at the code, which I never really did to that extent. And here we take our branch name. Yeah. So we only want, so that's interesting. This filtering here, that's something to stare at. So we only want local branches, and local branches are refs heads. Great. And this corresponds to this. Great. That's it. And we have a test for that too, so all good. This ends with /. We add this. Since condition is a string, we can nicely handle it with a cow, so that's even efficient. The pattern, the condition is always a pattern, but it's probably okay to just rename it here. Yeah, I can't come up with anything better here. Branch name, wildcard mode. And I think this extra variable here we don't need. Just have to convert this into an option. And we are done. Does this need to be a B string? It does. Is there a simpler way to do this? I think there is. Oh, yeah, that's a cow. Yeah. What about this? Okay. And I like it that this is a bit spelled out now so that we can see the final transformation here more clearly on a separate line. So I think that's the last refactoring. Before we run Clippy and see if nothing snuck in that shouldn't be there. Clippy is not happy. Great. Useless use of format. True. Very true. Thank you, Clippy. And what else was there? Where is that? That's some other test. And what was it? How do I get that back? The expression creates a reference which is immediately a reference. Just change this to dear. Okay. Great. Let me do that. And say thanks, Clippy. Because I'm really thankful for that. It's great to have that strong tooling, and it's only getting better over time. That's awesome. That's the way. And I think that's making us ready for, yeah, let's run all the config tests just for good measure while we prepare the push line here to push into the branch directly. And we're done. Awesome. So from there, I think all the other tests should be refactored to match that style, and have one test per assertion in the configuration of in the specification. That should make it really easy to understand really what's going on. And I shall write that down here and be done with this review. Awesome. So thanks a lot for watching and have a great day.